Seven Church. So today I want to come to you with part 4 in our series, Foundations of the Covenant. Today we're going to be looking at the word covenant and where it actually first appears in Scripture, which takes us all the way to Genesis chapter 6, verse 18. We're going to be looking at that, and which is the story of Noah, no surprise. And then we'll be moving forward to Genesis chapter 9, where actually we really see this word coming up more often, and what it implies for us under the covenant that many of us now see ourselves under. If you've got your coffee and your computer or a handheld device, I'll be working out of the blueletterbible.org, their Bible study. Reason being is because it literally works on every device that I have, including the very, very old iPad mini that is in my pocket right now. So we'll be working from that, so feel free to download that, and then if follow along, I'll be putting cards up, screenshots of those things, so that way you'll be able to follow along if you're not driving. Don't do this and drive. It's distracting slightly. So all right, grab your coffee, meet me back here in 2. So we're back here with Genesis chapter 6, verse 18, and this is the first incident that we see this word covenant used. God speaking to Noah, it says, "But with thee I will establish my covenant, and thou shalt come into the ark, thou and thy sons, and thy wife and thy sons' wives with thee." God says, I'm going to save you from this judgment that is coming, and in exchange for that, you will follow the ordinances that I put before you. And so Noah's like, I'm cool with that, and on the ark they go. Now, verse in Genesis chapter 9, verse 9 is the next time that we see this word used. And again, it is God speaking to Noah, saying, "And I, behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you." So this is very pivotal when it comes to analyzing what the Bible is actually saying, because we do not come from a culture that is a covenant or contractual culture. When you're dealing with the Near Eastern mindset, it's a little bit different thing. For them, a meal is a very important part of social interaction. If in the Near East, in the Arab Semitic countries, when they invite you into their house to break bread and share a meal with them, that is a very, very important thing. It is you saying that you are in agreement to come and have this relationship with each other, that you will watch each other's back, that you will be good for your word, you will love that person and not hate them. That's what those terms really mean, is you can rely on me or you cannot rely on me. Love, hate. And so when it comes to a covenant, the idea behind it is that this is an agreement made between two people who have affection towards each other. They have a friendship with each other. They have love between each other if it's a marriage contract. That's what these covenants or contracts are based on. And sometimes we miss that, we miss the underlying requirement of all of these things, is that there is love between the two parties, that this is a mutual agreement. So when we move on to God talking to Noah, and he's saying that I am going to establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you. So that seems like not a big deal. That literally means until the end of time, this is my covenant. And as long as you fulfill your end of the deal, I will be good for my end of the deal. When God makes his covenant with Abraham, as we referred to in the previous episodes, when God's making his covenant with Abraham, or Abram at the time, the sacrifice that was laid out, when you make an agreement with each other, when you break bread with each other, they go and they kill the fatted calf, and when that animal is divided up, those two parties will walk between those two halves, saying, if I break my oath to you, any oath I make to you from here on out, if I break that to you, may what was done to this animal be done to me. when God, that is the culture, that was a universally accepted idea over there. You hear a lot of people saying, well, the Bible is based on these things. Yes, because they were all from the same culture. God came to show how he was different from these other gods that these people were blindly following. He was trying to establish who he was. And so, yes, there's going to be similarities because he's working within the understanding of the people that he's dealing with. He's not trying to talk above their head. He didn't come to them and say, in 2021, there will be people standing in their living room recording crap on cameras. I mean, there was no need for that. He was dealing with them where they were at, because that's how the Father always comes to us, is where we're at. So when you see God speaking with Abram and making the covenant, in that situation, for God to show how this was different than any other covenant, God passed through the two halves and Abram didn't, because God said that I'm always going to be faithful and you're not, and I already know it. We're going to be in 9:11, Genesis 9:11. Wow, that's weird. Thus I established, just notice that, thus I established my covenant with you. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood. Never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you, everything that was on the ark, for perpetual generations, for every generation, for all of your generations. There is not a time when this will not be applicable, as long as we remain in covenant with him, because that's his promise, is I will not destroy the earth because of it. The idea of saving those who trust him out of destruction. And that's what he does with Noah. And he promises through the covenant that he gives us, the sign of the covenant, which is the rainbow, that there'll never be a time when he has to save his people again out of a cataclysmic flood like this, because that's not the pattern that is going to continue on. And so if we read on, we see something that I thought was pretty amazing. Just kind of must have read over. A lot of times if we've read passages that we're very familiar with, we have a tendency to just run right across the top of them. It's actually one advantage of reading a version that you're not used to reading, because you have to slow down. Verse 9:13 says, I set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Verse 9:16, it says, the rainbow shall be in the cloud, and I will look on it, God, I will look on it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. When we see this phrase in the Old Testament, because it comes up quite a bit, I will remember, it doesn't mean that he forgets. It means that he will take action, that he will move on our behalf. So it's not oh yeah, I forgot I made all you got. It's not like that. Unfortunately, when you're moving from one language and mindset to a completely different language and mindset, and then a couple of more languages in the middle, sometimes things get a little gray, but it just takes a little bit of time. We move forward in Genesis to chapter 15, and then we have this agreement between Abram, which we've already gone over really, and God establishing this, again, a physical sign between Abram and God, where God is saying, I want you to let everyone know that this is who I am, and this is how you worship me, because they had all kinds of gods then, and they had all kinds of rules and regulations for that specific god. There was things that you could do and couldn't do. There was things you could eat and couldn't eat. Egyptians wouldn't eat lamb. Did you know that? Just like the Torah observant people don't eat pork and several other things that the Bible lists. That was the same thing in Egypt. This is not a foreign concept. It's only foreign in America, where we have the idea that a belief system should not come with, rules and regulations, guidelines, even though your job has it, your relationship has it. You're driving on the road has it. Every single aspect of your life is governed by rules and regulations, but when it comes to our relationship with God, we want to tell him whatever or do whatever we want. And it really kind of started for me because there's no place where you can go and do what you want and then be able to get rewarded for that. God is establishing through these covenants that he is making with mankind incrementally here through the book of Genesis. We see him establishing, I will bless you if you are in covenant with me. If you are doing what I ask, if you are living according to the way that I ask you to live, then I will bless you. Then I will protect you from the flood. Then I will, and we will, as the covenant grows and the promises increase, we see more and more of what his expectation is of those who say they follow him. Genesis 15:18, and it says, on the same day, this is again God talking to Abram, on the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, to your descendants I have given this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates. This is God establishing with Abram where the promised land will be for the children of Israel, for those who were in covenant with him. There was always the caveat of you have to be in covenant with me. In verse 17 of Genesis, there's God uses the word covenant in an interesting form. He says, and I will make my covenant between me and you, and will multiply you exceedingly. This is new. This is a new addition. He didn't tell that to Noah. He says, you go forward and multiply, you just do that thing. What he's saying is that now I'm going to add to this agreement that we have. I'm going to multiply you exceedingly, and that means in all areas. And I will establish my covenant, this is Genesis 17:7, and I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you in their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and your descendants after you. The covenant applies to us as long as we want to serve God. As long as we want to follow the God of the Bible, we are saying we are coming in covenant with the said God of the Bible, and we will abide by the instructions you've given us. Jeremiah 31:33 is the last scripture that I want to deal with today, because this really is instrumental in understanding it as it reads when we are talking about these covenants and how they actually apply to us. So this scripture is one of those that in all the years that I was in regular Christian churches that we used to say that Jesus came and brought a new set of instructions and a new set of commandments that we were supposed to follow, and that everything that happened in the Old Testament, that happened with Moses, the law and the prophets, all that stuff is done away with, and we just do what Jesus said. I still don't have the list of the new commandments that Jesus brought that are different than what God gave to Moses, or the different instructions that Paul had, or Peter, or James, or anybody else. I still don't have that list, but I think somebody must be working on it, because we've been telling that one for quite a while. It must be like caught at the printers. What I want to do is deal with this verse in Jeremiah 31:33, and no sleight of hand. We're just going to read the verse for exactly what it says, and then you can come to whatever conclusion you want. Jeremiah 31:33 says, but this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after all those days. Who is the house of Israel? Paul says, all of us who have come to accept Jesus as Yeshua, as the Messiah, that we are grafted into, wait for it, Israel. Paul says, if we're believers, we are Israel. We are in the same covenant that Israel was in. We don't replace Israel We are in the same covenant. Those who follow God follow the same path. There's only one way, one faith, one Lord, one baptism. That is not in there for no reason. If we read verse on, it says, I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. So where's the part that says I give the new law? It says, I will put my law. I will put my instruction. I will put my Torah. I will put my information that I gave to Moses on Mount Sinai in their hearts. It won't just be words on a page. It won't just be something that you're trying to do, that you're trying to observe. It won't be that anymore. In your heart, as David says, your word I hid in my heart, that I wouldn't sin, I wouldn't transgress the instructions of the Father. His heart was after him. Even though he was a flawed man, his desire was to love the Lord. He loved the Lord. He wasn't concerned about a ritual and all that stuff, and you shouldn't be either. We're not, those things we do to show how we love him. They shows that our heart is in covenant with him. Our heart has to be in covenant with him before any of these external things matter. Paul talks about that with circumcision. If your heart is not circumcised, you can cut off whatever the flip you want. It ain't doing you no good. And that is the universal theme that starts from the beginning and goes to the end. Paul wasn't really bringing any new idea. It's only new because we just don't understand it. If you have any questions or any comments, please feel free to leave them below and give instructions on speaking English. I'm having a little trouble today. We're going to dig into Jeremiah much more in the next section, and that way maybe you can get a better, and again, so you can decide for yourself. I'm really not trying to tell you what to think. I'm just trying to tell you what the plain words on the page are, and you can come to whatever conclusion that you and God come to. So, all right. I love you guys. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. It really does help. It does help get the message out, and it does help build community, because without a community, this is just me talking to a camera. So, all right. Love you guys. See you soon. Have a good day. Bye.